If you can't tell by my voice, I'm a bit sick, but I need to get this video out, so you'll have to excuse me if my voice sounds like shit throughout the video. You'll just have to bear with me, I'm sorry. Now, a question I've gotten asked a few times is, why don't you scale Marvel or DC? And the answer is simply that I don't read comics. Or to be more specific, I don't read Marvel or DC comics. The only comic series that I've actually fully read through is Image Comics' Invincible. And while I do believe that the animated series has handled its story better than the comics so far, the comics are still incredibly good. But this isn't a review video. No. Today, we will be analyzing the strength, speed, and durability of Mark Greyson, aka Invincible. When it comes to scaling Invincible, there are only a handful of feats that are actually worth talking about, so the main scaling is going to go by pretty fast. But there are 3 distinct ways of potentially amping the verse to levels a good bit above what I personally scale it to. These methods only relate to AP, and I'll be going over each of them after I'm done with the main scaling. Even though characters in the series have done stuff like destroy planets, which I'll get to later, people for some reason still think that the verse doesn't even get above Continental. However, as we can see relatively early on, this is far from the truth, as right before the Invincible War, Mark had to stop the Mauler twins from hijacking Earth's satellite-based communication. And the way they were going to do this was by sending a missile to the sun, which would explode and cause a solar flare larger than any in recorded history, disabling every satellite. And Mark catches up to it, punches it, and then gets hit by the full force of the explosion and does not take any damage. Not even his suit is scratched. This is extremely impressive when you take into account that solar flares can have energy outputs worth 10 to the power of 26 joules of energy, or multi-continental. So even Mark's suit is able to withstand multi-continental levels of power. And characters like Conquest can easily break this suit and even punch holes straight through Mark. Then, as we move further into the series, we get the most infamous feat, the destruction of Viltrum. Now, I'm actually not interested in the planet being destroyed, because I wouldn't say anyone actually scales to this. This is because the core had already been destabilized by the Infinity Ray, which means that we actually don't know how much energy you would need to destroy the planet. But what we do know is the energy you would need to send the crust of the planet flying off into space, which when calculated gives us a power output of 3.4 zetatons of TNT, or small planetary, which becomes 1.13 zetatons when dividing it by 3 due to this being a combined effort by Mark, Nolan, and Thaddeus. But this would still make each of them small planetary individually, which makes sense considering that it can withstand flying through the planet, but got knocked out from the planet exploding. This is consistent with a statement we get a bit later on of Thrag saying that 37 injured Viltrumites would be more than enough to rip the planet in half. And dividing the energy needed to split the Earth by 37, it would give us around 6.7 times 10 to the power of 30 joules, which is small planetary. As you can see, the AP scaling is very simple, and I would say that speed is too, but there is something we need to explain first, and that is Nolan flying from Earth to Thraxa. This feat has always been kind of a weird speed feat, as people either completely disregard it or use it to say that the verse is billions of times faster than light. In my opinion, it isn't completely invalid, but it sure as hell doesn't make the verse billions of times FTL. This is simply because Viltrumites are known to be able to travel long distances in short amounts of time, because as they move through space, they are able to constantly accelerate. Think of it like this. If you're on Earth and driving a car, then the car constantly needs to use energy to move forward at a constant speed because of things like gravity pushing it down towards the ground, causing friction. In space, there is no real friction and gravity is very minuscule, meaning that you don't really have to put in effort to move at the same speed. So the more effort you put in, the more you're going to accelerate over time. This means that while Nolan can reach extreme speeds, he can only do so by building up speed for a longer period of time. But we do still have a pretty good speed feat that we can use to get the verse to MFDL+. And this comes from issue 77, where Mark jumps out of Tech Jacket's ship and instantly outspeeds it and getting to Earth before it. This is not him accelerating over time, as he just jumped out of the ship and was instantly faster than it. And while the ship would have been accelerating because, it's traveling through space, it would have been close to its top speed as it had almost reached Earth. Calculating the ship's speed is also pretty simple. We know that it took less than a week for the ship to reach Earth because it did so before Oliver recovered. And if we lowball the distance to an extreme, we know that the closest solar system is 4.5 light years away. This would give the ship a top speed of 328.7 times faster than light. And again, while the ship would have been accelerating over time, they were already very close to Earth when Mark jumped out, so it is safe to say that it was close to its top speed. Mark also moved many times faster than the ship, which would likely put him at MFDL+, even while lowballing the ship's speed to an extreme. So Mark should be around small planetary and MFDL+, with him potentially reaching planetary at the very end of the series, considering not only how much stronger he gets before the end of the series, but also how much stronger he is in his prime. For the methods that could get Mark even higher than this, I'll be explaining the weaknesses for these methods and why I don't personally use them. And I'll go from least to most reliable. For the least reliable method, we have to look towards a different comic series made by Image Comics, which is Spawn. This is because during the Invincible War, we see an alternate universe Mark say that he killed the spawn of his universe, and presumably killed the spawn of Mark's universe. This would most likely be referring to base Spawn, but I'm gonna be honest here and say that I don't know where Spawn scales. I looked it up on Versus Battle Wiki and other battle wikis, and it could range from "that's not impressive at all" to "holy fucking shit." But these higher ends don't come from base Spawn, and I don't know which of these feats do. So if anyone in the comments knows where base Spawn scales to, I would like to hear that. But regardless of that, it isn't very reliable because the spawn that he killed is not the same spawn as we see in the Spawn comics. So we have no real way of actually determining his power. So the weaknesses are simply that there are no reliable ways of scaling alternate universe Spawn, and that base Spawn might just be really weak. Method 2 also requires us to look at a different comic series, but this is much more simple, because Tech Jacket is an established character in Invincible, and the Tech Jacket comics take place in the same universe as Invincible. And in the 3-issue digital series, we see him fight against the bounty hunter Null. Null is able to one-shot a Galactus-like character that said he was going to consume a planet, which would arguably put Null, and therefore Tech Jacket, at above baseline planetary. Tech Jacket struggled to fight against 2 alternate universe Marks, and Mark far outscales his alternate universe selves, which would scale him above baseline planetary and potentially even large planetary in his prime. The only real weakness for this method is that consuming a planet can mean many different things. And considering that this guy isn't even bigger than the planet, I think it's safer to say that he's just going to consume all life or life energy on the planet. The third and final method is the one I find the most reliable, and it is also the one that would amp the verse the most. And this comes from a character called Omnipotus, who, according to his info card, once claimed to have destroyed a star system. The info card then goes on to say that this was due to a chain reaction, meaning that he didn't actually destroy an entire solar system in one blow, but that still means that he destroyed a star, which would make him star level. And Dinosaurus can one-shot Omnipotus, and Mark far outscales Dinosaurus. The problem with this line of scaling is that he absorbs the energy of worlds and even universes to make himself stronger, and the reason he comes to the Invincible universe in the first place is because he drained and destroyed his home universe, and now he needs more energy to, continue living. The info card even states that his power is theoretically infinite because he can just keep absorbing energy. This means that he never has a consistent power level, as he can go from supposedly reshaping reality to only being able to move the terrain around him. This means that we have no clue how strong he actually is when returning to Earth for the second time, and we have no idea how strong he was when he supposedly destroyed a star system. Just before he returned to Earth the second time, he said that he had spent a few months draining the life from different worlds. This is of course referring to life energy, and the life energy of a few different planets probably is not enough to destroy a star or even a planet. So while he can be star level or even universal, we have no clue where he scales to in the 2 issues he appears in. So in conclusion, Mark is more reliably small planetary in MFTL+, but if you really wanted to, you could arguably get him to planetary or even star level.